Hey everyone, today we're talking about Anglo-Saxon warfare, a time when battles were tough, loyalty meant everything, and kings proved their worth through fighting. Back in early Anglo-Saxon England, being a great warrior wasn't just something kings did, it was what made them kings. They won battles, took over lands, and demanded riches from their enemies. This was how they rewarded their supporters and made sure everyone stayed loyal. It was a dangerous and intense time, but it's also how powerful kingdoms like Mercia, Northumbria, and Wessex came to be. We know a lot about Anglo-Saxon warfare thanks to some amazing old sources. For example, there's Bede's book, Ecclesiastical History of the English People, which was written in the 8th century, and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which was like a diary kept by the royal court of Wessex. There are also epic poems like Beowulf, the Battle of Brunanburh, and the Battle of Maldon. These poems don't just tell cool stories, they show us what it was like to live and fight in those times. In Beowulf, for instance, the Danish king Cild Scafing is called a good king because he defeated his enemies and made them pay tribute to him. Archaeology also helps us understand this era. Have you heard of the Sutton Hoo helmet? It's a famous piece of treasure that belonged to an East Anglian king. It's not just armor, it's a sign of wealth and power. Speaking of gear, a rich warrior back then would have a spear, a round shield, a mail shirt, and a helmet with a cone shape. They'd also carry a sword and a seax, which is like a big knife. Swords were especially valuable, often passed down in families. Even Alfred the Great left a sword to his son-in-law in his will. Horses were super important in Anglo-Saxon culture. Their legendary founders' names literally mean stallion and horse, but they weren't used much in battles. We only know of 2 times when warriors fought on horseback. One is in a poem about the Battle of Brunanburh, where English warriors chased their enemies on horseback after the fight. The other is from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle in 1055, where Ralph the Timid's cavalry ran away before the battle started because they didn't know how to fight on horses. Most of the time, battles were fought on foot, and horses were just used to get around faster. Ships became more important as time went on. By the 7th century, the Kingdom of Northumbria was using ships to raid Ireland and take over islands like Anglesey. King Alfred the Great even designed his own fleet to fight against Viking raiders. His successors used ships to launch attacks on places like Scotland and Normandy. One king, Edgar the Peaceful, set up a system where each region had to provide sailors for the navy. This shows how much the Anglo-Saxons relied on their ships by that point. Most battles were quick and decided in a single fight. Sometimes leaders tried to talk things out before fighting. For example, Harold Godwinson told William the Conqueror to leave England before the Battle of Hastings. Leaders also prayed for victory. Before the Battle of Ashdown in 871, King Athelred I went to Mass before leading his troops. On the battlefield, the main tactic was the shield wall. Soldiers stood side by side, holding their shields together to make a solid wall. They used spears to stab at the enemy, trying to break through the other side's wall. Once a shield wall broke, the battle turned into chaotic hand-to-hand fighting. Keeping morale up was super important. If a leader died or their flag was captured, the whole army could fall apart. That's what happened at Hastings when Harold died, and the English army scattered. But for the warriors closest to their leader, loyalty lasted even after death. The poem about the Battle of Maldon tells how Brytnoth's men kept fighting after he was killed, determined to avenge him or die trying. That kind of loyalty defined the Anglo-Saxon warriors and their way of life. And Anglo-Saxon social structure was both rigid and carefully organized, with the king holding the highest authority. The king had many responsibilities, including leading the army, protecting the kingdom's borders, overseeing councils to address important issues, and establishing laws to ensure order. Directly beneath the king were the ealdormen. These influential lords were tasked with managing vast regions called shires, acting as the king's representatives, and ensuring the smooth governance of their areas. Following the ealdormen were the thegns, a class of landowners who were both wealthy and skilled warriors. Thegns played a significant role in managing the kingdom's affairs and defending it during times of conflict. Beneath them were the ceorls, or freemen, who made up the majority of the population. Ceorls typically worked the land as farmers, but their economic status varied widely. While some ceorls were prosperous, others barely made ends meet. At the very bottom of the social structure were slaves. Many slaves were captured during battles, or were punished with enslavement for committing crimes. A person's position in society was closely tied to their warguild, a monetary value placed on their life. This system determined how much compensation their family would receive if they were killed. For instance, the warguild for an ealdorman was 8,000 coins, whereas a thegns warguild was set at 2,000 coins. This system highlighted the importance placed on social rank and the value associated with each role in society. The military system was deeply rooted in loyalty between the king and his nobles. Young noblemen, known as geoguth, began their careers by serving in the households of kings or prominent lords. These young warriors protected their leaders, accompanied them during travels, and fought in battles. Those who demonstrated bravery and unwavering loyalty could be promoted to the rank of duguth, experienced warriors entrusted with greater responsibilities. This elevation often came with rewards in the form of land grants, which in turn positioned them as leaders within the kingdom. These land grants were not mere gifts, they came with obligations. Landowners were expected to raise troops for the king, help maintain essential infrastructure like bridges and forts, and participate in important councils. By the 8th century, land grants began to be passed down through families, solidifying the social hierarchy and making it more permanent. Military service was determined by land ownership. For every 5 hides of land, a hide being a unit of land large enough to support a single household, a landowner was required to provide 1 soldier. A thegn with 50 hides of land, for example, would need to supply 10 soldiers. These troops would gather at local muster points, and then join larger armies led by ealdormen to support the king during times of war. By the 9th century, the Anglo-Saxon military system struggled to handle the increasing threat of Viking raids. The Vikings' swift movements, using ships and horses, allowed them to strike quickly and retreat before significant resistance could be organized. They captured towns and used them as strongholds for further attacks. Between 867 and 874, several kingdoms, including East Anglia, Mercia, and Northumbria, fell to the Vikings. King Alfred the Great of Wessex emerged as a leader capable of addressing these challenges. After achieving a crucial victory against the Vikings at the Battle of Edington in 878, Alfred implemented significant changes to strengthen his kingdom's defenses. One of his key innovations was the creation of the burhs system, which involved constructing 30 fortified towns, or burhs, throughout Wessex. These burhs were protected by sturdy walls, deep ditches, and stationed soldiers. They were strategically placed within a day's journey of every inhabitant in Wessex, ensuring that people could quickly find refuge during an attack. Roads connected the burhs, allowing for rapid communication and the movement of troops to defend neighboring areas. Alfred also restructured his army to address the kingdom's vulnerabilities. To maintain readiness without overburdening his soldiers, he divided his forces into 2 rotating groups. One group remained active and ready for deployment, while the other attended to local duties and managed farms. Additionally, Alfred equipped his soldiers with horses, greatly increasing their mobility and enabling them to respond swiftly to Viking attacks. These reforms helped Alfred and his successors regain lost territories and expand their control over England. Over time, the burhs evolved from military strongholds into bustling centers of trade and daily life. However, the relative peace that followed was not permanent. During the reign of King Athelred the Unready, England's defenses weakened, and a second wave of Viking invasions began in the late 10th century. These renewed attacks led to the Danish conquest of England, with rulers like Svein Forkbeard and his son Canute the Great taking control of the kingdom. Maintaining peace in Anglo-Saxon England was a complex task. Kings used strategic marriages, alliances, and payments to build and maintain relationships with rivals. The church also played a role in mediating disputes and promoting peace. However, achieving peace with the Vikings was particularly challenging due to their different customs and practices. Alfred's victory at Edington allowed him to impose peace, but only after proving his military strength. He required Viking leaders to convert to Christianity and swear oaths of loyalty. This approach, combining force and diplomacy, became a key strategy for later rulers as they worked to unify England and defend it from external threats.